Chapter 4, Sla'go. The bite of sunrise filled her face. The warmth of very familiar scentolopes spread on each shoulder. Lynn's embrace always comforted her soul. It was always safe, always there. Juno's head on her lap started to be a regular occurrence, her scent helping Chili sleep. They both had the same quirk of only waking when she rose. It's okay. The air didn't stink of urgency. Goodbye was having the time of his life, having two females on each shoulder. It seemed that they had finally settled. Their scared peeps drowned the night. It was always the same when the new members of Clan Moore met the higher-ups. Sleep was always at the back of their minds, the fear of being eaten being present. The only two that could sleep on day one were Juno and him. Now that he was in her mind, Chili scans the camp for any sightings of the hunter. Piff stared blankly with red eyes. Sleeping next to him was the otherworlder. Tabio was carving a small log in the shape of a woman, while Ribley slept on his shoulder. Byron woke up before anyone else, praying to his otherworldly lord on his knees. The orcs went off to do their daily activities, killing monsters and feeding the Titan. It was fine. Before they left, the mission assigned was investigating the rumors of Dollface. Tabio told the tale before he went to sleep that they were being transported to the northeast. It would be a deviation from the course, but challenge is what she lives for. She heard the chirping of birds, the rummaging of the local wildlife. She flicked her ears as she wondered where he was. The tree above them had an aching sound as she realized the hunter was perched up in the trees. There was no snoring. He was fully awake up there, keeping an eye out for any encounters. She kinda jerked her body, waking Lynn up. Chili turns her head to see the waking scentolopes, smiling from her satisfied moans. Lynn smacks her lips, making enough noise to wake the half-born. Juno's ears flicked as she tenses her curled-up body to wake up her nerves. "Good morning, ladies," Lynn said with a yawn, stretching her tiny frame. Juno wiggles her nose, adjusting her eyes from the dark. "Good morning," Juno said while still snuggling Chili, seeming like she was going back to sleep. Chili pointed her finger, making sure to curl it to blunt her poke. She added enough force to make the half-born grumble, which forced her to get up. She raised her body as she sat on her own legs. Her ears were crooked. Juno then awoke, looking around the camp. Nothing was giving her security. "He's up in the tree." Chili pointed up at the vague shadow through the branches. Juno flicks her ears up, giving Chili an embarrassed flush. Lynn smiles at the hopeless half-born, reading her suppressed emotions. "Ah, young love, such a beautiful thing," Lynn jokingly said, putting her chin on Chili's shoulder. "No, it's not like that." Juno droops her ears, while she notices that the two weren't buying her excuses. She looks up, frightened if Calcanus was going to hear the banter. Lynn slaps her thigh, surprised at how firm they were getting. Collie is a human Juno. He shouldn't hear anything if we whisper. Lynn whispered to Juno, making Juno pull her ears in embarrassment. Chili sighs. She wonders why she had to be in the middle of this gossip. You should be going for prey your age. Once a male gets that gloomy, it's rare for them to jump back. Lynn said as she nodded her head at Delson, which the three found his youthful vigor attractive. Juno sighs, annoyed by the thought. I don't even know him personally. Juno pouted, making Lynn chuckle softly. Lynn remembered a comment from yesterday, bringing it up. If what Tull said is true, at least you could have offspring with the otherworlder. Lynn stated, looking at Chili when she said offspring. Chili snarled, as Lynn still believes that they had a sort of relationship. Juno avoided her gaze from the two, seeming to get bothered by the comment. For the last time, I didn't breed with that human, Chili said while grinding her teeth. Lynn then pulled herself deeper on her shoulder. Curiosity filled her brown eyes. So how would you know? Lynn probed, making Chili snarl once more. She really wanted to forget that evening from memory. The two centelopes wanted to know. Curse these herbivorous folk. He told me the night bullwag rejected my advances. Chili pouted, as Lynn's eyes shined with enthusiasm. He was a booty call after that. Lynn still had lingering thoughts that they did in fact mate. Juno's gaze was blank, kinda signaling Chili's cautious thoughts. Her once ruby eyes now looked like the red eyes of a monster. We didn't do any of that. Listen, I was bummed after the rejection. Moore forced the human to talk to me. You girls heard that. We just talked. Chili tried to make her case, easing their suspension. Yet, a memory shot inside her noggin, how she tasted the hunter's flesh. His blood tasted sweet like apples, and his tasty muscles filled her with longing thoughts. Just talk, huh? Lynn questioned as she saw Chili's tail wag, blankly out with a longing expression. Juno's expression still hasn't changed. She needs to make her case. Listen, all he did was offer me some gut destroyer, and we just talked. She assured the second time. Lynn sighs and chooses to believe the Lyconian. He was leveling with me, telling a tale about how he had a mate for a while. They tried to sire a babe, but during the time he couldn't. Chili summarized, leaving out the part where she bit the hunter's flesh. Juno drooped her ears, not having any excuse to believe she was telling a lie. You asked him before. Lynn asked Juno with a tilt of the head, wondering why the half-born cared so much. I hinted. Juno confessed, making the two sentients wiggle their ears. Juno sighed and told them the truth. I might have asked him if he wanted to gather some herbs together. Juno blushes, making the two gasp from how forward she was. You're more predatory than I thought, Lynn told the defeated half-born. Juno freaks out, waving her hands around consecutively, denouncing her claim. I wasn't thinking that. I thought we could just spend a day talking about herbs and getting to know each other. He's always making herbs into those bombs, so I just thought, Juno rambled, as the two sisters gave each other a really look. Chili was waiting for her point, speeding up the story. "What did he say?" Chili asked, making the half-born grumble. "Nothing, then just walked away, like we never talked about it." Juno pouted, sketching a circle with her finger on the ground, with a hint of anger. Lynn and Chili were surprised by the hunter's lack of an answer, usually answering back with sarcasm at least. "Can't help it. He might just see you as an animal. Most rational humans ignore beastkin advances." Lynn tells the sulking half-born as she shakes her head, acting a bit stubborn. "How can he act like he has no interest? He gave me a kiss when we were captured by the knights a month and a half ago," Juno confessed as the two looked at her with shock. Juno realized what she blurted out, waving her hand for them to ignore the statement. It didn't work. "When? How long? Did it have a tongue? Did he pin you down? Did you pin him down?" Lynn listed her fantasies, oddly being really invested in the gossip. No matter how much she suppressed her quirks, she was still a centilopes. Chili could only blink rapidly, thinking that when they saw the fate of the world, they were getting intimate. Juno whirls her hands once more. They had the wrong idea. It was just a peck on the cheek. The cheek. Juno pointed to her dimple, adding emphasis. The two's enthusiasm fades. Only pups and kittens would blush over a peck on the cheek. Chili lost interest in this gossip, locking eyes with the reapif, his statue state with his eyes open. Chili tilted her head, having the other two look. "Good Lord, is he dead?" Lynn asked, with no one actually having an answer. Juno squints, getting a deeper view of the Rhea, seeing his chest expanding with the minuscule amount of air. "He's alive, just fell asleep with his eyes open in terror," Juno pointed out as the three misfits chuckled within themselves. Brian heard the giggling women, turning around with a smile. "Good morning, young sisters. Did you all rest well?" Byron asked as he rose from the ground with a balanced leap. Juno droops her ears with a hint of fear. It was just in her instincts to fear a Boltaris after the incident. Byron saw that his presence disturbed her, stopping where he stood. Lynn waves at him to come, knowing from his body language that he is sincere. "Sorry for our half-born. She had a bad experience with a member of your race," Lynn pointed out, as Juno felt like trash for putting her guard up for the pastor. Byron didn't mind, choosing to keep his distance, yet close enough for them to talk. "Many of my race commit atrocities. We were born bigger, so that gives us the right to bully others," he said as he tapped his large knees, wiggling his whip-like tail. The three saw that he just wanted to talk, nodding their heads to let him continue. The Boltaris was excited, patting his sermon garb with a grand smack. "So you girls are part of the band of misfits. I heard so many tales when I was a young calf," Brian said, remembering tales from back then. Juno was still wondering how old the orcs were. Idle banter told her that they found Demona and Simon when they were pups. Chili and Lynn knew that they had a delta they raised before Demona. The tales of the three orc brothers were a triangle shared legend. Yes, sir. Sorry for leaving you guys out of the loop. Lynn said with honesty. How can one tell another that they report to orcs, the sentient menace of the triangle? Nah, it's okay, leader. Yesterday was a sight I never thought would grace my old pair. Tabio woke up, waking Ribley in turn. She rubs the drool she left on the Sithkatul's shoulder. She seems to be numb to personal boundaries. Tabio slaps her hand off as she only shrugs with complete lack of apology. I think my old man sang songs on top of mountains about the 3 passive orc. Ribley stretches. As Piff and Goodboy woke up, there was a disturbance. They saw her ample bosom wobble with her stretch, with both of them making a high-pitched scream. The high pitch made the rest of the camp wake, all of them being on high alert. Orcs, Okiki said, as she pulled out her scavenged sword. Slavers, Yennefi said, as she pulled out her survival knife. I told you I don't swing that way. Delson woke up in a shout, squeezing onto Piff for dear life. Lynn chuckles at the otherworlder, finding him entertaining to keep around. Then, the Misfits heard the sound of crashing branches coming from the tree. Calcanus was coming down fast, leaping from thick branches, breaking twigs, and stabbing the tree trunk with his gauntlet to slow his speed. Once he was in falling distance, he took a bound from the tree, rolling on the ground with a dueling pistol in hand. The weak-hearted screamed from his threatening aura. The female friends, Piff and Delson, flinched from his display. Calcanus looks around as he wears his serpent mask, only showing them his angry green gaze. The 3 core members slapped twigs off their pelts, annoyed by his entrance. The fuck, Cal? How about acting this way when a serpent-class monster comes bumping in the night, you ass? Lynn yelled while she chucked a bundle of twigs at him. Chili snarls, about to get up and start another round with the hunter, as Juno grabs her tail. Chili was going to lay her law on her, but she backs off when she saw the vein on her forehead. Calcanus turns around after he felt a disturbance, locking eyes with Juno. She thumbs her foot consecutively, making the hunter say 2 words. I'm sorry, Calcanus said sincerely. Scene, Juno's journal. It was sudden, but our course had been altered from a single name spoken by the new crew. Dollface was the only topic the ex-slaves spoke of on the whole journey to the east. I know that money is really tight after the care package we gave to Bulwag and Ramai, but hunting a named chimera seems like a misguided idea. Mr. Tabio continued his description of the women from last night, interrupted by the appearance of the orc brothers. He only confirms that Dollface has the appetite of a Calistocan, preferring the meat of sentient beings. She has cruel, retractable claws, like his own, sharp enough to slice through the strongest hides. Piff and Tabio said that the bounty on her head was high, explaining through the trip that it was even higher than Calcanus' S. Okiki and Yennefi told Lynn that they would rather stay away from a monster like that, while Lynn tells them that they could just head home without us. They complained for a while, but they seemed to prefer the numbers we have. They also told us that they actually live on a farm settlement close to Glade. Lynn agreed to take them back afterward. Chili and Calcanus bickered again. Lynn mentioned his infertility from a passing conversation. Calcanus seemed to control his temper until he told Lynn and I that she was crying that day. They fought, yet I noticed that they weren't slugging as hard this time around. I guess it's true, after all, that Calcanus is actually infertile. How can a male be so alluring and not be breedable? The whole day was quiet. We circled around any parties of sentience we saw on the road. The orcs didn't come visit us. I wonder if anything happened to them. They always sniffed us out. Maybe the triangle was finally the land of death. Ribley played a song over the fire tonight. It was soothing to the ears. I wanted to ask Calcanus for his opinion, but out of nowhere, he grabbed her lute and gave her a hush. What came after was hard proof that the triangle was out to kill us. This was the night we encountered the Sla'go. Scene. Chapter 4, Sla'go. Calcanus hushed Ribley's lips as he looked into the forest with caution. The Misfits had been adventuring with the hunter for a month now, never seeing the human show fear. Lynn puts up her guard, making the fighters do the same. He grabbed Ribley's shoulder and made her lie on the floor, Lynn taking the action as the non-combatants should lay low. Lynn chose to have all the younger members lay, Juno, Delson, O'Kiki, and Yennefi, with just a finger down. This would leave Lynn, Chili, Goodboy, Calcanus, Bryon, Tabio, and Piff to fight. Piff chose to lie down as well. Lynn didn't really blame the small male. Calcanus went to Goodboy and snatched his shield, leaving the Infenrial snarling. Calcanus interrupts his words as the group hears loud hisses in the night. Every fighter scatter and hug a tree. Calcanus whispers as the hissing became louder, enough to sting the nerves. They followed his words, for this was the time the Serpent Slayer was going to prove his name. Calcanus stood over the fire as the younger members trembled from the soul-shattering hisses. Calcanus slowly slips his hand into Goodboy's shield, pulling his short sword out of his backpack, stabbing it into the earth. He scrambles in his bag more as the sound of the beast closes in. He finds a small flask of clear spirits. Taking a deep breath, he was ready. He waits, closing his eyes so his instincts could tell him the right time to act. He looks at the fighter crew, liking how spread out they are. Out of the crowd, he sees Chili as the Lyconian stares back. She had a neutral gaze, one that had some doubts, yet was filled with trust, making him smile. He closes his eyes again, waiting for the unknown to close in. After a few, the nearby cracking of the woods told him that they were here. Goodboy was the first to see the beasts, going bug-eyed from the sight. Next it was Chili, Lynn, Bryon, then Tabio. The glow of the fire reflected its eyes to the group as it stared at the flame with its slit green eyes. Goodboy kept his cool as the beast hissed its tongue right in his face. Goodboy looked at Calcanus with a trembling body. Calcanus returned his gaze with a head shake. The Sla'go was entranced by the flame, seeking its warmth as it was taught to do with its genes. Sla'gos seek fire from sentience, letting the warmth fill their prey's bodies. The fire makes the prey easier to detect, a cruel evolution from the lady. It whirls its head around the trees, having the length of a sentient alone. Its slim yet muscular legs crunched on Goodbye's tree, its claws having enough power to crunch bones. It articulates its body like a snake, having strong vertebrae instead of regular bones. Its grip strength can hold its body weight as it navigates the forest horizontally. Its flexible movements disgusted the group as it contorts its legs without joints. The beast hisses. The sound stings the ears from the screeching sound as it slithers its body slowly. It was an apex predator, having a long enough body to devour a Bultarus twice in a row. Its slender frame helped it hide in the trees, navigating effortlessly. It creeps closer quickly, making Lynn's ears go back as she goes bug-eyed. Calcanus drips the alcohol down the blade, letting gravity coat it. Calcanus kills the flame, kicking dirt, only leaving a spark left. His action made the Sla'go focus on him, swirling its head to see his different angles. Okiki gasps as Yen covers her mouth, hearing a second Sla'go behind Calcanus. The sound did add fear to the hunter, yet he had to look down at the crew. They were all trembling. Even the easygoing Ribley feared death. They were all in their own worlds, yet Juno was looking up to him. Fear lingered in her eyes, but she was readying her script spells. Calcanus picks the blade up, sparking the blade with the dying fire. The blade glowed with fire as Calcanus ran away from the young folk. The Sla'go quickly followed his trail, their powerful legs letting them leap over every obstacle. The twin serpents stop as the hunter takes up his stance. The two Sla'gos probed his sides, seeing if he had any weak spots, waving their heads side by side as they hissed. One of the serpents strikes like a viper the hunters. Timing had to be perfect with the shield to block. The other serpent strikes right after, as the hunter had to spin his body to keep the momentum. The two serpents hissed, seeing that their prey was going to be a fighter. Calcanus sidewalks them, heading to the others as they waited and watched. These creatures had a sick fascination with playing with their food, believing that Calcanus is weak and alone. The flame died down, yet it did its part, gaining Sla'go's attention. One strikes swiftly. This time, it tenses its muscles, making Calcanus fly back from its power. The other snaps at Calcanus when he is down, only for the hunter to roll and block the attack. There were cracks showing on Goodbye's shield, making the hunter sweat as the serpents were getting impatient. Between the two trees were Lynn and Chili, waiting for any semblance of a plan. Nimble fighters climb the trees slowly. When positioned, drop and stab vital parts. The back of the head, neck, shoulder vertebrae, and heart, the middle of the back, located where the front legs are. Calcanus said as the Sla'go noticed some heat from the campfire, investigating the younger crew and Piff. Once he said what he needed, he tapped his sword on the shield, making the Sla'gos hiss with killer intent directed at him. Before he taunted the beast, one licks at Okiki, making the girl shiver while she drops a tear. The other opens its mouth, letting its saliva drop onto Juno's back as she bites her lip. It was a snake, all right. It widens its jaws, showing her that it could swallow her whole. Then Calcanus hits the shield, and both of the beasts whip their necks to lock in. Loud noise challenges the Sla'go, especially when they perceive their prey to be little more than a mouse. 2 bounds were all it took for the 2 monsters to close the distance with the hunter, as their eyes made him click his tongue. Their eyes dilated, showing the hunter that they were done playing around. Lynn, Chili, Tabio, and Goodboy climbed up the trees slowly, while Brian stood in place. He was too big to climb covertly. They settled in place, waiting for the right time to act. The Sla'gos have now moved as the lady intended. The beast rushes Calcanus with deadly precision, striking rapidly to throw him off balance. The second swirled around, trying to flank the hunter and go for his sides. Calcanus gets thrown by its strike. 2 blocks and a slash stop the monster. The first Sla'go takes a minute to settle its pain, whipping its long neck for a second. Chili and Lynn find their opening. Lynn throws a dagger at Chili as they freefall into the beast. Lynn strikes its head, while Chili stabs into its heart, making the beast flail in pain. Its slim build betrayed its appearance, as the ladies couldn't pin the beast down. The Sla'go snaps at Lynn, almost sinking its fang into her thigh. Brian rushes the beast, pinning it down by the neck so she could hold its head down. The other swiftly navigated through the forest, ramming Calcanus with all its weight. He blocks its fangs with the shield, yet it still slammed him into a tree. Calcanus loses his breath, while the Sla'go crushes him with its strong neck. The young fighters rush into danger. Juno, Okiki, Yennefi, and Piff rush at the first beast. The latter stabs at the beast, while Juno tries to summon her words of power. Juno, the second one, Lynn ordered the girl, having her rush to aid Calcanus. Goodboy and Tabio aimed for its vital points, dropping into the second Sla'go. The beast loosened its head from Calcanus, letting the hunter breathe. He didn't waste any time sheathing the blade in its eye. Juno followed up with her words of power. Eradicibus fiamis, ad solium compactum, scopum meum velat, arborum liga. She summons binds, as the trees grow roots to pin the beast down, being plenty for a 4-man crew. The beast was losing life, yet still fought the reapers. The Sla'go's strength broke a thick branch, giving it enough wiggle room to slap the shield out of Calcanus's mouth. Calcanus tries to dodge its coming fangs, yet the spell Juno summoned left his escape with plenty of obstacles. Juno's heart sank as the beast stabbed Calcanus's left leg with a single fang. Calcanus, Juno screams at the man as the Sla'go thrashes his body in the tight space. Blood flowed down as he grunted with every slam. Goobly digs his blade into its heart, as Tabio assumes that he do more than stab at its neck shoulder. He pulls off his red bandana and wraps it around the Sla'go's head. Come on now. You want to tango, beastie? We're gonna tango. Tabio tightens his grip and chokes the upper half of the Sla'go's neck as it releases Calcanus on the floor. Calcanus crawls on the floor out of the bind cage. Juno wants to go help him, but the beast still had enough fight in it. Ribley and Delson rush to Calcanus's aid, picking him up and dragging him away from danger. Then the second crew heard a loud scream coming from the first party. The dying Sla'go wrapped its hand around Byron's foot, crushing it effortlessly. It was its last gambit. While it fooled the team, it made its body go limp. Once the ladies, Piff and Byron, let their guards down, it crushed his right ankle. Byron screams in pain as his ankle turns purple, while Chili and Lynn try to break its grip. It locked its vertebrae as it died. That hand was not coming off. Lynn bashes her longer knife into the Sla'go's leg, lopping it off the body. 2 injured men were the casualty report, a fair tale from a Sla'go encounter. The second beast finally went limp, having Gubai and Tabio hop off before it could do the same. The first crew drags Brian back to camp, requiring all hands on deck. The Baltaurus grits his teeth from the pain, sweating as his body heat rose. Calcanus limps with the 2 aides, as Juno closes in with a frightened gaze. "Cal, I'm so sorry. Cal, please don't." Juno sobbed as she felt guilty for trapping him next to the Sla'go. Calcanus looked at her with a bit of rage, not directed at her, but the pain. "Camp now," Calcanus said under his snarl from the pain, as Juno nodded in shock. Ribley grabs her arm to guide her. She didn't have the drive to fight her shocked state. "Lynn, fire." Calcanus yells out as the first team lays Brian next to a stump chair. "Everyone, firewood, anything fast." Lynn barks as the crew scavenged the wood quickly. Chili just chucks the stumps they made for the day. The crew followed her example. The 2 wedge Calcanus on the log next to Brian as he points to someone to retrieve his bag. He pulls out a bottle of gut destroyer, handing it to Chili so she could lace the wood. The potent spirit met the strike of the match, lighting the bark quickly. Calcanus plants a sword within the fire, letting the flames heat it up. The team hesitates about what they were going to do, as Lynn knows what they should do. Chili laces the blade with gut destroyer, wiping off the blood and dirt from it. Byron sees these 2 events, gulping at what he thought was going to happen. "Juno, do you still have the first aid kit?" Calcanus asked the half-born, as she nodded and shuffled into her bag. Lynn stood over Byron, having an ultimatum for him. "Do you want to die?" Lynn asked the sweating Baltaurus, as the crew stared silently at him for his answer. He shook his head, refusing to die here. Juno pulls out the bag, handing it over to Calcanus. She drops her body, sitting on her legs as she tried to summon the words of salve. Calcanus grasps her wrist, shaking his head. "You're going to be up all night soothing Byron." "I'm fine. Just let me handle this myself." Calcanus assures her as the half-born droops her ears from lingering guilt. "We will wait until the blade gets hot enough. Afterward, we will hold you down and lop it off." Lynn said with a cold tone, "This surgery is going to be the difference between life and death." Chili passes Calcanus the bottle of gut destroyer, with 1/4 of the liquid remaining. He drinks the liquid to numb the pain in his brain as he opens the Otherworlder first aid kit. He opens up the contents, glad to see that Juno hadn't been using any of the items. Everyone was shocked by its contents. All the supplies were worth gold in the right areas. Delson looked at the bag because it didn't look very fantastical. Where did you get that? Delson wasn't comfortable with the quiet and tense atmosphere, and he asked Juno. She didn't know where to start, still in shock from the injuries of the two sentients. It was originally Calconus's bag, back in her first month in the Triangle. It was when they first met, making a reluctant deal to trade the bag for a couple pounds of flour, so she could heal Chili's burned wound. Juno gazes at the Lyconian's wound, still a bit patchy, but healed funny how the bag came full circle. Doesn't matter, he's going to need this afterward. Calconus told Delson, then gave Okiki a bottle with a red top. She didn't know how to use it, looking at the bottle from different angles. Calconus went for a brown bottle, popped the seal, and dropped a hearty amount in his wound. It stung, but he was taught that the pain helps. He swiveled his body, with Ribley and Juno aiding him, letting the bubbling liquid drop by gravity. The blade glowed with hot red as Tabio shoved his bandana in Byron's mouth. All hands on deck, excluding Lynn, Juno, and Chili. Calconus was left to his own devices. Everyone held onto the Bolterus with everything they had, Tabio and Ribley on his right arm, Goobly and Okiki on his left arm. Goodboy held his damaged leg, Piff and Yenify on his other. Chili swings the blade up, Lynn prepares the hot blade, and Juno prepares some words of power. Omnis qui manum domini dusum sentient, levimen, amalo quem chaos, inflixit sentient. Juno controls a floating ball of soothing ointment, preparing to aid the Bolterus. Chili does a practice swing, making sure she hits straight on the ankle. She brings it back up, then slashes down with her Lyconian strength. Byron screams as he bites down on the bandana, letting his damaged foot fall on the ground. He was passive, but the strength of a Bolterus tensed everybody's muscles. Juno controls her finger, coating the clean slice with salve, while Lynn reaches for the hot blade. She laid the flat blade on the wound, making his flesh sizzle from the heat. It was painful to watch. Many of the weaker-willed members diverted their eyes. The mixture of heat and salve made short work of his wound, as the bleeding stopped quickly. Some of the crew looked at Calconus, wondering how he was holding up. Cal has already prepared a string of stitching. He squints as he stabs into his flesh, the only indicator of pain. He stabs the other end of the skin, tying a knot to secure the first stitching. He took his time, making the stitches close together and preventing large gaps from forming on his wounds. He left enough tension to hold, enough to leave his skin flushed. It was going to be a long night, with the heavy breathing of Byron. Yet the Lord and Lady graced them, for they hadn't lost anybody from the encounter.